Okay, so scope is a really important concept. It is to do with variables and also functions in other languages, and it means to do with where we can actually access something or where it can be seen. So often in programming languages, we want to hide information from people that we don't want to be able to see it. So if you think of sort of a person, a person basically has their name and first name, last name, their date of birth, which when you sort of look at a person, you sort of can't actually generally access and manipulate and change those. They're linked to that. So we want to sort of set that to be like a private scope. So it's local just to that person or just to that version of that object. But everyone has, a name and so on. So what we want to do is set stuff so it's local when it needs to be, keep it as private as possible, and then only open it up when you actually need to. So there are other variables called global variables, which means they can be seen anywhere inside a program. So we're going to have a little look at some scopes. So the example that Codecademy sort of gives, if you live in a city, you may see the city skyline or the river, and the skyline and river are only accessible locally in your city. But if you think about anywhere in the world, you can see the stars, well, depending on the hemisphere, that they're going to be globally available. So let's have a look at what we need to do for this. So we've got blocks. So blocks are sort of groups of information together. So we have a block inside a set of curly braces. So all those things that are together are contained in one sort of set of information. So we've got a constant here and we want to log the sky color. So remember, this is our shorthand for making a function. And we set the sky color to be blue. And if it's dusk, we might want to set the sky color to be pink. So we're going to look at how we can use blocks to define the scope of variables. So this is sort of depending on what sort of time things are going to be. So in the file, make a constant variable, make it city, and set it to be New York City. Okay, so let's have a look. So this variable exists outside the block. And below the city variable, write a function. So there's a few different ways we can do this. Log city skyline. And we're going to have it nice and empty. Well, if you in function. So we've got that. Now, inside the function body, so that's inside these curly brackets, we're going to make another variable called skyscraper and set it to be Empire State. So it looks like we're going to New York. So this is what's known as a local variable because it is inside a function. This variable will only exist as long as whenever the code inside these brackets are running. So if we were to be on line 6, this variable, the computer doesn't know about it, but it knows about city. The skyscraper, when we're inside the section, it knows about everything that is like one level before it. So it knows about this New York City section here. So it knows about that global variable. Okay, so we got that one. Cool, and let's just return. So we're going to return, and we can do this a few different ways. Dollar, curly bracket, what's the function? Skyscraper. In the city. Okay, let's return that. Now, remember we're not seeing any output because we haven't actually told it to log anything yet. And now we're just going to log it. Console.log, and we're going to run log city skyline. So we're just going to run that function. Oh, what have we got here? Let's have a little look. Oh, just a little bit of like spelling errors here. We don't have that capital letter. And you see it's printed out Empire State Building in New York City. So it's managed to pull that information out of there, which is awesome. Now, so we actually had our global scope, which is what that constant was. That was global, it could be seen anywhere. They're not bound inside a block, they're accessible anywhere in the program. So we've got this color variable, it's designed outside the block, it can be accessed in the function block. So it can be accessed and used here. But it can't be used the other way around. Okay, so let's have a look at what we got. So we're going to make a variable. So variable called satellite, and it's going to be the moon. Another variable called galaxy, and we want the Milky Way. And a third variable, stars, and we're going to have the North Star. So this was probably written by people in the Northern Hemisphere by the looks of things. Really picky about its spelling. Okay, now we're going to want a function. Call my night sky. And we're going to return these three variables. So we're going to have the satellite, the stars, and the galaxy. So remember, there are a number of different ways to actually write these. It gives the example on the left hand side here of using string concatenation, but using that interpolation gives you the same effect. So we've got that. Once again, still not getting the output because we haven't actually logged it. So let's now do that in the last step. So console.log, and we're going to run that call my night sky function. Let's run that, and we're printing it out. Awesome. So it's managed to use that global variable, night sky, North Star, and the Milky Way. Okay, block scope or local variables. So these are parts which only exist, or variables, when they're inside these curly brackets. So as soon as that bit of code finishes, it disappears, doesn't work anymore. Because if I try and run this here, reference error, because it doesn't know about it. We're at this level, it's only stored in the computer's memory while that bit of code is running. So let's make a new function. Log visible light waves. Okay. And we're going to have a constant in here called light waves, and that is going to be set to moonlight. And underneath that, we're going to have a console.log, and we're going to print out the contents of that variable. Haven't actually called that function yet, so we're not actually getting any output. And now we're just going to run that. Log visible light waves. And we see it prints out moonlight. Now beneath that, we're just going to get it to try and log whatever's stored in light waves. Now this is going to give us an error. So an error tells us it's that light waves. Light waves is not defined because it only exists inside that set of curly brackets there. So we're getting that. That's why we're getting that error there. Okay. So the problem we get is sometimes what's called scope pollution, or just having too many global variables that things get confusing. So we want to keep things as tight or as small as possible. So, if the night sky it's only going to be used in this one function here, that is where the variable should be created and included. If they're going to be used in multiple places, then pull them out to our global variables. So if we look at this example here, we've got a number is 50, it prints it out, changes it to 100, and then prints out the number. So at that point, it overwrites it to 100, and prints out 100. Now, whatever actually happens here, overwrites it, because this is a global variable. When I change it here, use this code to change whatever's stored here, it changes this actual memory location permanently. Hence why it is also going to print out 100 that second time. So it will still work, but you won't be able to get to that 50 because we've overwritten what was originally stored there. So let's actually try that here. So we're going to have on line 6, we're going to have stars, and we're going to change it to Sirius. So it prints it out. Cool. And now we're going to have another console.log down here to get it to just print out what the content of the stars variable is. And you see it's now overwritten it to Sirius. Good if you want to overwrite the values, like if you want to change like a balance over accounts or so on. But it's bad practice because we can easily accidentally overwrite something when we don't want to. We often want to use what's called getter and setter methods to do this, which we'll sort of look at later. It means you can you manually go and overwrite them with explicit functions and you only create a local variable just inside if you need to. So a good scope is going to hide things away. So using the block scopes, we've got a dusk, which is inside that function. We've set the color to be blue, and if it's dusk, we change the color to be pink, and then print out the color. Otherwise it becomes blue. And if we try and just log color by itself, it doesn't actually work. It actually creates a whole separate variable here. So if it's dusk, it does that, otherwise it doesn't. So it's really powerful, really useful. So let's have a look at what we've got. Inside the function body, the flight waves, beneath the region, and before the provided console.log, we're going to put an if statement. So if region is equal to the Arctic, we want to do something. Cool, so we checked it, and we're going to set region to be the Northern Lights. Okay, now it hasn't like this because it wants to create a new let variable, because this is only going to run while this one section is actually working. Okay. Actually, light waves. So we're going to use change it to the Northern Lights when it's in the Arctic, and then after that, once again, log that out. And we want to log the light waves. So it prints it out, then goes back and uses light waves. So only overwrites it for this section. Because I created a variable here, it only exists for this. So it's using this variable instead. When it gets back to here, if you see that's all lined up in here, it's using this variable, not the original one that was overwritten. So really, really useful and powerful concept. Have a go with it all. It will take a lot more time to sort of get used to it. The key thing is you've got global variables, which everyone can see, and then local variables, or what they call block scope, which are ones that are stored inside other functions, and they only exist while that function is running, and then everything there is gotten rid of. If the variables have the same name, it will use the one that is most local to. So if you've got a local variable with the name, Superman, and a global variable with the name Superman, it will use the local variable first, and then if that doesn't exist, then it will go and use the global variable. Okay, take care.